Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Tom Rivera. I'm a retired administrator from Cal State San Bernardino, and we started an oral history project of South Colton. Today is April the 25th, and it's about 1 o'clock, 1:30, and we are taping this afternoon on the fourth floor of Powell Library here at Cal State San Bernardino. And our guest this afternoon is Miss Gloria Castillo. And Gloria, welcome to our oral history project here at Cal State San Bernardino. And thank you very much for being with us.
Mm-hmm.
And also joining us is Mr. Henry Vasquez, who's part of our committee. And behind the camera is Mr. Frank Acosta, who's also part of our committee. And why don't we get started? Gloria, did I pronounce your name right? Are you Gloria Castillo, or
Yes,
is there
that's
another
right.
name that I think you said Mary?
Well, it's Mary Gloria.
Mary Gloria Castillo.
Yes.
Okay. And you were born and raised in Colton.
Yes.
And Grandpa came to Colton in the early 1900s
Mhm.
because your father was born in 1906 in Colton.
Yes.
Tell us about your dad. Where did your dad work?
Well, he worked and he got a job at Jaeger Construction Company,
Uh,
and he worked there for quite a long time until he retired.
and your mom, you said your mom was from Arizona that moved to Colton.
Yes. Mhm.
Now, how did your mom and dad meet?
Well, my mom lived on 7th Street, and my dad lived over the railroad tracks on M Street.
So they're just about neighbors then.
Yes.
They're just about neighbors. That's how they
Yes.
knew each
Uh-huh.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are you the oldest in the family?
No, the oldest was my brother, but he passed away.
And your brother's name was
Eduardo Castillo.
Eduardo Castillo. Just the two of you then.
No, then my younger sister, Amelia Castillo, she passed away.
All right. So there
too.
were three of you in the
us, yeah.
family.
Mhm.
Okay. Besides, before working for Jaeger Company, construction company,
Mhm.
did your father work in another?
Well, he got a job selling tombstones,
For
Frank Ricker of Riverside.
for Riverside.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And for how long did he do that?
Oh, he did, well, actually, he would go pick oranges too, and the stones were on, like, if he had time, they would send him a card, or Mr. Ricker would call him, we have somebody that needs you to go down there to see, they will buy a stone.
So perfect timing, because today we're going to talk about the citrus industry, the oranges in
Yes.
in our area, the
Mhm.
Inland Empire, and specifically Colton. And tell me, Gloria, you graduated from Colton High School.
Yes,
And after that, you went to business school.
yes,
And then after you graduated from business school, you must have been about 20, 21 or so. Um, your uncle Evaristo Gordo Castillo,
Mhm.
who was a contractor for the packing house and also the pickers, mentioned to you that there was an opening
Mhm.
at the association. What association was that? What was the name of the association?
Redlands Highlands Association.
Redlands Highland Association, and
Mhm.
they were basically, were they the people that were in charge of the orchards in the Redlands Highland area in Colton, or were they the packing house?
Well, at the packing house.
They were the packing house?
Mhm.
They were the packing house. And what area did they cover, Gloria?
Would be Redlands, East Highlands, I think Riverside. That's another one. I think that's it.
So mostly the Inland
Mhm.
Empire,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Redlands Highland,
Mhm.
maybe Rialto,
Oh,
Colton.
yeah, Rialto had a packing house
Rialto,
there, yes.
Colton,
Mhm.
and also much of the Riverside area.
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay. And tell me, you started working for them, and How did you get the position, Gloria?
My uncle told my dad that they had an opening there. And so my dad called me. I was at work. I was working at a March Air Base. He called me and he told me, and he said, "Why don't you go? Your uncle says they need somebody there." So the next day I went. I talked to them. They asked me questions if I knew how to do things. And I said yes, so they hired me. And next day I started working for them.
And your position was what, Gloria?
Payroll clerk.
You were a payroll clerk because at business school you were an accountant?
Yes.
Okay, so that was kind of an easy one then.
Oh, yes.
It worked out.
It was.
And tell me, what were your responsibilities? What were you in charge of?
Okay, well, I was in charge of making out the payroll, balancing it out, and then making the checks. For each foreman had their group, the foreman. They would bring in their slips without boxes and all that. We had to count and make sure that the count was the same as we had for the pickers.
Okay, so you, there were several foremen like your uncle.
Mhm, yes.
Más o menos, how many foremen were there?
There were about 7.
7, and
Uh-huh.
they covered the whole Inland Empire.
Yes,
then.
uh-huh.
And basically, they would submit the money that was owed to the pickers.
Yes.
And then you would make the checks for the pickers.
Mhm.
And how many days did the pickers get paid for?
It would be 5 days.
They worked
'Cause
5 days?
Yeah, 5 straight.
Any Saturdays?
Sometimes they would work on Saturday, but mostly not that often.
But Saturdays was when the harvest was ready to be picked then.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. And más o menos, Gloria, how much were the pickers paid?
Oh, well, they were paid by
By the
by a box, yes.
By the box?
Uh-huh.
I remember when I was picking oranges, it must have been 14 or so years. You know, I was a rata.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't
Oh,
climb the
yeah.
ladders. But
You
I
did the
got
bottom.
the bottoms of the trees.
Yes.
And I would pick about 20 boxes, and I get about a quarter per each box.
Mhm.
So the going rate must have been about, for grapefruit, the going rate was about 15 cents. And for oranges, it was about 25 cents.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was the going
Yes.
rate. And let's see, we're, did, I should ask you then, you mentioned your dad was picked oranges.
Mhm.
And then you mentioned that your uncle was the one that got the job for you
Mhm.
with the company, the citrus company. I forgot the name of the citrus company.
Redlands Island Association.
Redlands Highland Association. And then you started working for them. Now, how did your uncle become a contractor for the company?
Well, Michael would always go to Redlands or East Highlands to talk to some friends that he had. And the main officer of United Packers, Mr. Bob Garcia, would tell, that sometimes they had foremen and they would leave, so they would tell the workers if you know of anybody that would come and, bring pickers and that. And they told my uncle, and he went, and they got him, he got the job, so.
Okay. And as a contractor, he was assigned one area of where to take the pickers to pick oranges?
Mhm. They had several areas because there's several growers,
Okay.
mostly like it was in Redlands, and that's some in Riverside and East Highlands.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the growers belong to the association?
Yes.
And they would contact the association and make sure that their harvest was picked by
Mhm.
somebody that
Yes.
represented the association.
Mhm.
And you had about 7 foremen, and one of the foremen was your uncle,
Mhm.
Evaristo Bordo Castillo.
Castillo.
Okay. Now, as a contractor, what was he responsible for?
Well, to get the pickers there to the grove on time.
Okay, now, in recruiting the pickers in Colton, his area was Colton. All the
Yes.
pickers came from Colton.
Mhm.
Now, how did he recruit the pickers to work for him?
Okay, well, the pickers, they knew more or less, somebody told him that he needed a crew, and they all, they all talked to each other. So finally, they went to my uncle and said that they wanted to pick oranges.
Okay, and the crew was how many people?
Usually it was about 10
10
pickers.
10 pickers?
Mhm.
And besides recruiting them and hiring them,
Mhm.
uh, what else was he responsible for? Was he responsible for picking them up?
No, usually if they were, they lived in Colton, they usually had their own transportation.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, but for the most part, I remember when I picked oranges, um, the contractor would pick us up
Yeah,
in the
uh-huh.
different neighborhoods.
Yes,
Like in our place was the Veterans Park in South Colton.
Oh,
And then we went around Colton and picked up different people.
Yes.
Did your uncle also do that?
yes, he would, the ones that didn't have transportation, he would pick them up. Early in
Okay.
the morning, he would leave to pick them up.
About how early were the pickers picked up?
See, they had to start working at 6, so you would have to pick them up around 4:30 or 5.
Oh, very early.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
early.
Mhm.
Very early. Now, the pickers, when they got picked up, did they have their own equipment, or did the company, the association,
Mhm.
provide the bags, the fruit bags, and the clippers for them?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And the ladders too.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, a bag was a good size bag,
Yes.
and they tell me that bag held about 50 pounds of oranges, about 50 pounds of oranges. And that if you fill one of those bags, you could fill a lug of oranges,
Mhm.
a box of oranges.
Mhm.
And then for that box of oranges, you would get 25 cents. Yeah. There were some people, were there kind of a contest among the workers to see who could pick more that day?
Some of them would do that.
They would do that?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
during the day, or they would do that.
Uh-huh.
So I pick more than you, and no, they would go like that.
Uh-huh. And in Colton, did anybody have the reputation of being the best picker?
Not that I know of.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for example, I interviewed Mrs. Aranda a few weeks ago, and she
Mhm.
said her husband was a cienero,
Mhm.
that he would pick 100
100
boxes
boxes.
a day.
Mhm.
That's a lot of boxes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, he must have been quite good.
Yeah, he must
Fast.
have. Yeah, because the pickers that came from Mexico, they would pick about 20, 25 a box a day.
Mhm. Yeah. And then, but most of your pickers were from Colton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Now, the pickers from Colton that worked for your uncle, Eduardo, were they pretty reliable? Were they people that were there all the time working
Yes.
for him?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you would have a crew of 10, 15 pickers that would go out with your uncle every
Mhm,
time and would take care of the orange grove that was assigned to them.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
Now, when they picked the oranges, did they pick them all at once, or would they go back and pick the first crop that was ripe,
Mhm.
and then would they go back again and pick the second crop?
Well, they would pick what they had to pick, but they would change, if they picked a certain amount in that day, they wouldn't go back.
Mhm.
But if they didn't, they would go back.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Now, you mentioned that your uncle had a good, reliable pickers. Were any of these pickers, did they involve their sons to also pick with them? Were families involved in the harvesting of oranges?
Usually they didn't want to, the Bacchanals didn't want to, because they were afraid the kids would get hurt or something,
Mhm.
and they would be liable.
Yeah.
So usually, like on Saturdays, if they pick 1 or 2, could go, you know.
Mhm.
There would be ratas that just picked on the bottom. Yeah.
So they would be kind of protected from climbing those trees.
Yes, yeah.
Do you remember how high the ladders were? Because I remember the contractor, like your uncle Gordo, would tie a trailer behind his track,
Yeah.
his truck,
Mhm.
and then put all the ladders on there.
Mhm.
Do you remember how high those ladders were? Were they about
16, I think there were 16.
16 footers?
Mhm.
16 footers, made out of wood or made out of wood?
Some were made out of wood, and then later on they had the ones that were aluminum.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
And they would work from, say, you said they would start at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
They would work till 12,
Mhm. Then they have their lunch.
and their lunch, I remember also that somebody like your uncle or somebody that worked for your uncle that
Mhm.
would load the trucks of the boxes of oranges
Mhm.
to take to the packing house. That person would start the fire. the
Oh,
little fire.
yeah, to have their breakfast.
Remember
or
that?
lunch.
You remember
Yeah,
that?
I used to do that.
What did you used to do?
I used to do that when we were picking and up north in Edison,
Uh-huh.
because I was a contractor.
Yeah, yeah, but
Mhm.
here in the orange groves,
Yeah.
somebody would start the
The
fire,
wood,
the
yeah.
wood,
Mhm.
orange wood, and they
Yeah.
would let the fire kind of just reduce to embers,
Mhm.
and then they would heat their tacos
Yeah.
with the embers,
Yes, it would.
and their tacos were made out of, what did they make the tacos out of?
Flour tortillas.
¿Y qué más? What do they put inside the tortillas?
Beans.
Frijoles and what
Yeah,
else?
carne, chile con carne.
Chile con carne. ¿Y qué
Chorizo.
más? Chorizo.
Yeah.
And a little bit of huevo.
Mhm.
And they would put those tacos on top of the embers. And
Mhm.
when you took them out, they were nice and hot
Yeah.
and crunchy and delicious.
Mhm.
¿Verdad?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were great. They were just great. Anyway, you worked for the association. How many years did you work for the association?
35 years.
You were there a long time.
Mhm.
You were there. And the association headquarters was where?
After that, they changed it to Redlands. We're right in, they changed, we got an office in Redlands because Colton Cam was going to be torn down.
Uh, The old office going to be torn down,
Mhm, the camp.
the
Yeah,
camp?
mhm.
And then so they decided to build or put a new office?
No, they got one that was already there. You know, they rented it.
Where was this?
It was in Redlands, I can't remember that. I know near the bridge, I can't remember the name of the street.
Mm-hmm.
Redlands Boulevard, this way, then that one.
Was it close to downtown Redlands?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay.
It was in that far.
And the name of the organization was still the same?
Yes, uh-huh.
And I forgot what it was?
Redlands Highlands Association.
Okay. When you mentioned that your dad was originally started working as an orange picker, many of our areas like East Highland,
Mhm.
all of Redlands, all the Mexicans that settled in Redlands,
Mhm.
all the Mexicans settled in East Highland, all the Mexicans that settled in almost any part of Southern California were attracted there because of the citrus industry.
Yes, uh-huh.
That they could get a job easily, and then like did you work all year?
Yes.
You work all year round?
Yeah, it would stop in October,
Okay,
and then they would send us up north.
okay,
My uncle and my aunt went up north with
okay.
his.
So for how long did you go up north?
We would go every season, after every season.
But what months?
See, we would go in November and December. And then January, I think the crop started around January, about 3 months every year.
Okay, so in the area here in the Inland Empire, we were picking from January till
Mhm.
October.
Yeah, mhm,
So it was almost year round.
yeah.
So people that were orange pickers
Mhm.
had a job almost for 10 months.
Yeah.
For 10
That's
months.
true.
So they could support a family then.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
They could support a family. And Besides your uncle, were there any other contractors in Colton?
No, mostly they
Juan
were.
Colunga? Don Juan Colunga that lived close to your house?
I know who you mean, but I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Yeah, the Juan Colunga was also a contractor.
Oh, really? He
Yeah.
could have been for another packing house.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So there were several packing
Mhm.
houses in the area,
There were 12.
12 packing houses?
Mhm.
And each of them would hire their contractors
Mhm, yes,
to go out and harvest the crop
Mhm.
for the different ranchers.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was a big industry.
I wanted
Yes,
to
it was.
ask, did you say that there was an office in Colton for a while and then it shut down, or maybe I misunderstood?
No, the labor camp shut down and they put our office in Redlands.
Okay, what was the labor camp? I'm not sure what that is.
That's where all the pickers were housed that were coming from Mexico. They
Oh.
housed them there.
Oh,
They had their doctor, they had food, they had, this man, Rafael, he used to make money orders for them to send home.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gloria, was this part of the Bracero program?
yes. Mhm.
So I guess Henry started in the 42,
Okay.
1942, and ended in 64. But did we have a lot of pickers from Mexico?
Yeah, we did.
So they finally became the majority part of people that would pick the oranges?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. And you mentioned that the association would provide housing for them,
Mhm.
would provide housing for them.
Yes, the labor camp.
At the labor,
Uh-huh.
they would have a camp. In the camp, they would have housing.
Mhm.
And what other services did they provide for them?
The food, their medical.
Did they cook for them?
Oh, yes, they had a cook that.
They had a
would
cook for
Yeah,
them?
uh-huh, yeah.
Are they providing medical services for
Yes,
them?
uh-huh.
Yeah. Now, in reading about the harvest industries in Southern California, many of the associations would build housing for their employees.
Mhm.
But in this case, in this area, the only one that you know was for the braceros
Yeah. Mhm.
and not for
Not for locals.
local
Yeah.
people?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
What sort of housing was it? Were they in actual buildings?
Yes,
Or?
uh-huh.
Okay,
Yeah.
not tents or
No,
anything?
no, it was intense.
Okay.
And what kind of, did they have a general store at these camps, Gloria, where people
Yes,
could buy?
they did. That's where they met Rafael. He was the one that took care of that.
uh, What kind of store did they have?
Oh, they had like for the shaving, cigars, everything, and then he would make money orders and all that.
Yeah, and what about clothing?
Usually they would have, but once in a while somebody didn't, and they would have some there.
About cigarettes and
So,
candy?
yeah, all that, yeah.
Okay, gum,
Yes.
like a little general,
Yeah, like a little
tiendita?
store, yeah.
Like a
Mhm,
little
yeah.
tiendita? Yeah.
Mhm.
And so anyway, but as far as you know, the association or the ranchers
Mhm.
did not provide, in the local area, did not provide housing
No,
for
uh-uh.
our local pickers?
No.
Yeah. So our local pickers were from Colton,
Yeah,
residents
they
of
had their own
Colton?
transportation.
And they had their own houses,
Mhm, yeah.
and they had their own families here.
Yes.
Now, how long was the contract for the braceros? Did they stay here the full 10 months? Or did they stay here, because you said the harvest went for 10 months,
Mhm, yeah.
from January to
Mhm,
October.
yeah.
Um, Were they allowed to go home and come back, or they
No,
just
if
stayed
they
here?
went home, they wouldn't come back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If when they stayed here,
Mhm.
and there was no work during those 2 months, what did they do?
Well, they would just stay there. I mean, they wouldn't do anything.
Mhm.
Because from where they were, it's East Highland, it was kind of far to go to town.
Mhm.
You know, unless they had a car or somebody had a car. Usually sometimes ladies would come and pick them up.
Oh, okay,
You
so
know, to
they,
take them to town or something.
oh, so they had entertainment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, would they go to town and visit the local happenings in Colton, in San Bruno, Redlands,
Uh-huh,
or in
yes.
Colton?
Mhm.
Yeah. Did any of them that you know of, did any of those braceros stay in the area and married our local girls?
Yes.
You,
Mhm.
really?
Mhm.
Really?
Yeah. Mhm.
A lot of them or a few of them?
What I knew of, well, the ones I knew, I think there were about 5 that stayed and they married.
Ah,
Yeah.
and did they live in Colton or
Redlands mostly.
mostly Redlands?
Mhm. Yeah.
And by staying here, by marrying here, they stayed here and
Mhm.
had their families?
Yeah, and got their visas.
Ah, so it's a
Yeah.
good way for them to become
Yeah.
part of our
Mhm.
society. Yeah. So I would imagine that the orange industry, like you said, how many packing houses did you have?
12.
12? And from those packing houses, Gloria, not only did we have jobs for people that were foremen
Mhm.
and people that worked in the office, the association, and how many people worked in the office? Yourself and how many
I
others?
think we were 4 or 5 that worked in the office. And then we had Mr. Garcia, that was our boss.
Okay, boss in what respect?
The boss of the office. Yeah.
Of the office?
Mhm.
Okay. And from there, then you would have the different packing houses.
Mhm. Yes.
And you said how many packing houses?
12.
12 packing
Mhm.
houses? And the packing houses, who do they employ?
Uh, for their office?
No, for their
For what?
operation of, you know, the oranges would come from the field.
Yeah.
They would go to the packing house,
Packers, they had packers.
packers.
They would sort out the oranges.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and they had people that would pack them.
Mm-hmm. Were these generally female that worked in the packing house?
No,
or
it
were
was
they
both men and
male
women.
female?
Yes, uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And were they on an assembly line? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. And then after they, and do you have an idea how many people were working at the packing houses?
Mm,
Más o menos?
I would say about 15.
15? And then after they graded the oranges, and after they packed the oranges to be shipped, you had another crew of people that would ship them or take them down to the railroad,
The trucks would come for them.
or the trucks would
Yeah.
come for
Mhm.
them,
Mhm.
and then they would ship them out
Wherever they were
wherever
to
they
go.
were going,
Uh-huh,
where
yes.
they were going.
Mhm.
So it was a big operation.
Yes.
Huge
It was.
operation, lots of jobs,
Mhm.
lots of jobs.
Yeah.
And what about in the association? Did they have people that would sell the oranges to different places around the country? For example, a juicer,
Mhm.
somebody that would make juices?
Yes. Yeah.
Or somebody that would sell to the grocery stores, sell the oranges to the grocery
Mhm.
stores?
No, not to the store, but I know a juice company or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I remember, now who did those labels? Did the association do
Yeah,
those
they
labels?
had, yeah. Mhm.
They have an artist that did those labels?
Mhm.
Yeah. And the artist would advertise oranges from California and
Yes.
also the place
Mhm.
where they would pick these wonderful, delicious
Yeah.
oranges?
Mhm.
Yeah. So how many artists did you have? Did you have one or two?
I don't know, tell you
No?
the truth. They worked in the packing also.
They worked in the packing
Mhm.
houses? All right.
Yeah.
And what else can I ask you about the orange industry? You know, first of all, a lot of people were employed by them.
Yes, they were.
Secondly, we were I would imagine back in the early 1900s and up to the 60s that we were the major producers of oranges in the world.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did you ever
Yes.
hear that?
Yes.
¿Qué te decían? How
Well-
would they brag about that?
Well, they talk about it in the office, the boss would,
Uh,
yeah.
what would they say?
He would say that, that they were, well, packing houses would delight that we were doing all the work, and that, as long as there were oranges, we would work. We would be working, but But if ever the orange crop wouldn't come up, that was it, you know.
Yeah. So when the industry started, everybody thought that the industry or the oranges would last forever and ever.
Yes.
And that's why they decided to put in a lot of investment into them, ¿verdad?
Yes. Mhm.
Because you also had the people the keepers of the orchards,
Mhm.
people that worked year round taking care of the orchards.
Mhm.
What about when it got cold, Gloria?
They
When it
would
got
get-
cold?
Yeah,
and,
they would have to go out and light the.
smudge pots?
Yeah.
Smudge
Mhm.
pots?
Yeah.
And what months were those? Were they in November, December? or
Around there,
Jan-
I think.
Yeah.
November, December.
And why did they have to keep the oranges at a certain temperature?
So they wouldn't go bad.
So they wouldn't freeze and
Mhm.
go
Yeah.
bad?
Mhm.
Okay. And did they employ a lot of people to go out there early in the morning and?
Well,
and-
usually it would be the foreman. You know, they would call the foremen, and they would take some of their pickers to help.
Well, like your uncle would be called,
Yeah.
listen, we need somebody to go to X Ranch,
Mhm.
the Henry Ranch, and
Mhm.
kind of light
Yeah.
up
Pots.
the pots.
Mhm.
And would, how early would they start doing that in the
Uh,
morning?
Well, they would go around 3 o'clock.
That they would
in
be
the morning.
done by what time?
Well, most of them, they would light them up, and then they would come home they went at 3, they'd come home around 6.
Mm-hmm. So it's got 3-4 hours
Yeah,
at
mhm,
half
they had to
time.
light all the ones in the grove,
Half day time.
especially
Now-
the grove was large.
And how would they get paid? I know they couldn't get paid by the box, but how would they get paid for being part of
They
the
would-
sludging crew?
They would pay them by the hour, how many hours they did, and we would make out the checks.
Okay.
Yeah, they would give us a list of who went out. Because usually the foreman would just put it with their checks.
And how much would they get paid for that?
For that, I think they got paid more or less, I'm not too sure. Could be, they had to go out 3 times, could be $60. I'm not too sure about that.
$60?
Yeah, they went out
$60?
3, or it depends, you know, how many days they went out.
Or
Mhm.
maybe 3 days, they get $60, or about $20
Yeah. Mhm.
a session?
Yeah.
Well, Gloria, it seems that your uncle was one of the main foremen in
Mhm.
the orange industry for Colton.
Yes.
And he influenced a lot of people that lived in Colton by giving them all jobs,
Mhm.
by giving them almost year-round jobs, or
Yes,
what? Steady jobs where they could make kind of a livable wage,
Mhm.
where they could pay their rent or buy a house
Mhm.
or put grocery on the table,
Yes.
and then take care of their families.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a good summation of what
Yes.
your uncle did?
Yes.
Yeah, because your uncle was very popular.
Mhm. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, what made him popular?
Hmm?
What made him popular?
I don't know, like he would be home and his pickers would go and sit with them and they would talk and that, and, you know, he would have my aunt make food for them, you know. And, well, they always came over, the ones that were there would go and say, you know, this Castillo did this and that, and they would go.
So your uncle would have his house open to everybody and
Mhm, yeah,
anybody, eh?
mhm, yeah. And he would help them out if they needed some money or something.
Or was he generous to them?
Oh, yes, like always.
Yeah, if they were hurting or needed an advance, he
Yeah,
would
he
give them
would.
an advance?
Mhm,
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So he would take care of his workers then?
Yes, he would.
Yeah, and they were very loyal to him then?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. So your uncle's house became a center for many of the orange pickers from South Colton.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he influenced many of them. Now, he lived on the corner, almost the corner of L and 7th Street.
Mhm. Yeah.
¿Verdad? L and 7th Street. Was he in any way connected with the church? Because the church was just across the street.
No,
No?
not my uncle.
No?
My aunt. She went to church right there. My
Your aunt
uncle.
was very religious. then?
Yes.
Yeah, but he
Mhm.
took care of business and made sure that he had work.
Mhm.
Was he involved in any other business besides besides being a contractor for the oranges, did he?
No.
He didn't,
he
he was
didn't.
always in,
Yes.
for how many years? How many years do you think he was a contractor?
I can,
When was he born?
1906.
1906?
No, wait, 1905.
1905?
Mhm.
And then, and you were born in, like I was, maybe 1939 or so?
39.
And he was already a contractor?
Mhm.
Oh, so he was
For quite a while.
a citrus person for a
Yes.
very, very long
Mhm.
time.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, I would also like to talk about you. You grew up where, in what part of Colton?
On L Street.
L?
7th and L.
7th and L?
Mhm.
That's where you have many of the activities there on
Oh,
7th
yeah.
Street.
Mhm.
You had the church there,
Mhm.
and then also you had the grocery stores.
Yes.
You have the restaurants there.
Mhm.
You had the panaderia there. And your aunt, or your grandma, was it your grandma Lola?
Mhm.
She had the tortilleria?
Yes.
Tell me about, how did you get started establishing a tortilleria there in South Fulton?
Well, my aunt, her daughter, decided, because my grandma wanted to do something, she wanted, and she told her that maybe, she would open a tortilleria or something, that would help, her. And like it was family, so all, like my mom, my aunts, and everybody knew how to make tortillas. So my aunt said, okay, we'll try it. And it was good for quite a long time. Yeah.
Do you remember how old were you when they started the tortilla?
I think I was about 5.
So the early 1940s,
Mhm.
when you started tortilleria.
Mhm.
And besides who made the tortillas, Gloria?
My mom, my 2 aunts, my 3 aunts, and my mom. They
Mhm.
made the corn tortillas on the, like they did like this.
See?
Yeah. I could never do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they made the tortillas.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And besides tortillas, what else did they
They
have? in
sold
the-
menudo, and they had like for menudo and burritos.
Uh-huh, okay,
Mhm.
okay. Now, who helped make the menudo? Did you help cut the menudo?
Yes, my grandma would tell us, you have to come certain time, come and cut the menudo. So we went and cut them out. It was about 6 of us. We went
6
and cut-
grandkids?
Yeah, we
6
went and cut
grandkids
it.
would- uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And then you'd cut all the menudo and get it going and have it ready. When did you sell it? When did you-
Sundays.
Sundays?
Yeah,
Just Sundays?
after church. Yeah.
Just Sundays
Mhm.
after church?
Mhm.
And why did you close down the tortilla factory?
Well, my grandmother got sick,
Hmm.
and my aunt didn't, well, she could have gone on with her, but she didn't want to anymore.
Mhm.
And then when my grandma passed away, well, she figured, well, we might as well close it.
Mhm.
So they did.
So anyway, but it was, I remember that it was a very popular
Mhm.
tortilla store,
Mhm.
because they had very, very good tortillas, very,
Yeah, and the Mexican
making
candy.
handmade,
and-
and gorditas are
Those
very
are
delicious.
The best, yeah.
¿Verdad que
Yeah.
sí? They were very, very good.
Yeah, we had this man that came from High Grove. He brought the paper, the Opinion, and his name was, I think his last name was Gomez.
Mhm.
Yeah.
¿Cómo se llama?
He had a hard Mexican name, Apolonio. When it's Apolonio,
Apolonio?
I think it was that or something.
Mhm,
Gomez.
mhm.
He would always come, and my grandma had to put aside some menudo for him, because he would bring the paper on Monday. So she would say, she'd heat it up, and when he came, he had his bowl of menudo there.
So they, so
Yes.
she knew how to butter him up. eh?
Yes. Yeah.
Te iba a preguntar also, Gloria, you had was it an uncle, Pete Lukey?
Yes,
How was he related to? Pete Lukey was one of the first people that
councilman.
was involved in politics.
Mhm.
One of the first representatives from South Colton to belong to the city council,
Mhm.
because before that, in 1941, we had Johnny Martinez, who was in city council.
Yes.
And then your uncle, Pete Lukey Sr., ran for city
Councilman,
council
yes.
and won.
Yes,
Do you remember what year that was?
I
No?
don't really.
And tell me, how are you related to Pete Lukey?
His wife, that's my aunt, was my mother's sister,
Your aunt's name is
Edmelinda.
Ermelinda,
That was
and she was
my mom's sister.
your mom's sister?
She was married to my uncle.
And she was married to Uncle Pete.
Mhm.
Married to Uncle
Mhm.
Pete. And because he was on the council, did the family become good supporters of him?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
Mhm. Yeah.
So through him, the family became involved in Colton politics,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right. And what were some of the issues or topics or projects that Pete Lukey Sr. was interested in improving? Was he interested in improving services to South Colton? Because it was hard to get services to
Oh,
South
yes.
Colton.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. He built the library that's on Caesar's Park, I think that's what they named it. That's in my uncle's name, Lukey Center.
Oh, the Veterans Park.
Mhm.
The Veterans Park in South Colton.
Mhm.
Well, that's right. They named
Yeah. Library.
the center,
Mhm.
the whole center,
Yeah.
library and everything else.
Mhm.
They're on Veterans Park, at Pete Lukey Center.
Mhm.
And that services South Colton.
Yes.
Yeah, on O Street and Pine Street.
Mhm.
O and Pine Street, yeah. Now, Pete Lukey Sr. Had a son, Pete Lukey Jr.
Yes.
And Pete Lukey Jr. was born and raised in Colton.
Mhm.
He went to high school, graduated
Yes.
from high school.
Mhm.
He was very active in high school. Went to Valley College, San Bernardino Valley College.
Mhm.
And then went to seminary and became a priest.
Yes.
Yeah. And after he became a priest, he was assigned to different cities.
Mhm.
And then he finally came to Colton. And what did he do in Colton?
Well, he told the bishop that we needed a new church because the church that we had was counting, it's too old and there weren't that many people would fit in it. But the bishop said no. Some cousin talked to the people and they all got together. They tore down the church and made it, the church that's there now, he made it. The people from the town, all the people got together.
South Colton.
Yeah. Mhm.
South Colton.
And they made the church.
So Pete Jr., your
Mhm.
cousin, did not get permission to build that church from the
No.
bishop.
Mm-mm.
He was a rebel.
I don't know.
He was a rebel. Now, so he just decided that we needed in South Colton,
Mhm, a church.
we needed a new church. And he said, well, let's build a new church.
Mhm.
Did he have a committee that
Yeah,
helped him?
yeah.
Um,
Mhm. They had people that did all the construction, people that did all the painting, people that put up everything. But, the whole town helped to build that church.
All of South Colton helped build the church?
Mhm.
Did they have the committee? Do you remember who was part of the committee?
Mhm.
Was it Manuel Padilla?
Yeah, he was one of them.
Uh-huh.
My dad,
Your dad?
Uh-huh.
Your dad's name was
Albert Castillo.
Albert Castillo?
Mhm. They call him Beto.
Beto.
Yeah.
I know him as Beto
Yeah.
Castillo.
Mhm.
Who else was on that committee?
That one is Carlos, I can't remember his
Mhm.
name. I can't remember who else, but I know there were several of them. Well, the whole town, actually.
So they had a
Yeah.
big committee that
Yes.
said, we are going to build a
Uh-huh, they
church.
had painters, they had people that did several, they worked in their job. They
Mhm.
would come and help during the week when they were off, or on Saturdays and Sundays,
Mm.
yeah.
So it was a community project that was
Yes.
put together by your cousin Pete,
Yes. Uh-huh.
Pete Lukey Jr.,
Mhm.
the priest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, when did he start the project? When did this construction start?
Oh, and he was ordained in March 1462, and I would say about 2 years after, He was ordained.
Oh, so it took him about 2 years to build the church?
Yes, uh-huh.
In the meantime, Gloria, where did they hold services for
Well,
South Colton?
they would have to go to what is it, Immaculate or, you know,
Did they ever rent the Wilson School to
No.
have services there?
No.
They didn't?
no.
Uh-huh. So they would go to the other church in North
Mhm.
Colton, the
Yeah.
Immaculate Conception, for services.
I remember going to mass at Wilson School.
Okay. Yeah,
You did?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, during the time that they were building the
Mhm.
church.
Mhm.
and how old were you, Henry? That was what, oh,
I don't know, I was in my 20s probably.
uh-huh. So they did have services at
Yeah,
Wilson Elementary?
yeah,
I
they
don't
used the auditorium.
Uh-huh.
It's like a cafeteria auditorium sort of thing.
And was Father Luki presiding over the services?
I think he was. That I don't remember. I remember that they had the folk choir there and
Mm.
sang all of those,
Mhm.
Songs.
the modern sort of songs, because you didn't have an organ anymore.
Yeah, that's
So-
true. Mhm.
And some of the people that are still that still sing for San
Choirs.
Salvador, were in that group, Arturo Calles and some of those people. Actually, I don't think he's in the group anymore.
No.
But back then he was.
Oh, wow.
And, they sang with their guitars and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then later on, when the church was built, there was like a folk mass, and then there was like the traditional mass,
Mhm.
with Terry Constant,
Oh, yeah, she's still there.
and then there was the Spanish mass, I think the early one, like around 7:30 in the morning, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm. They still have them, it's at 8 o'clock,
Oh, it's 8?
Spanish, and then they have the bilingual, and then there's 3 masses that they have,
Mhm.
8, 10, and 12.
Has I was going to ask you the next question, Gloria. When you were young growing up in Colton, has there been a change in Colton since you were young in comparing today? Like you mentioned the services.
Mhm.
I don't remember having bilingual services when I was young.
Really? Huh, yeah. Well, actually, then they would also have it Greek, in Greek,
Latin.
Latin.
Latin, yeah.
They would have it in Latin, I remember that.
Now, but tell us about the difference now in Colton, when you were young and
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
Today, is there any differences? Anything changed?
Well, to me, it's the same. I don't think there's any changes
Mhm.
different from what I was growing up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The people are the same.
Yeah. All the people around.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you still live in the barrio of La Reserva?
Yeah.
Is that your barrio now?
Yeah.
La
Mhm.
Reserva?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
At La Reserva, they called it, I don't know why they call it La Reserva, but it was close to where the cement plant is.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay,
That's up, like I said.
maybe a couple of blocks from your house,
Mhm.
¿verdad?
Yeah. Mhm.
And many of the people that lived in La Reserva, that part of the Colton, they worked at the cement plant.
Uh-huh. They did work, but now it's closed.
Yeah,
They closed it.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Anyway, is there anything that I missed, Gloria, that we should talk about? Henry, is there any other little?
Oh,
items?
I noticed one question that we didn't touch on. The one right there where it says, when did the industry, this is the orange industry, start slowing down? I was curious about if you might mention
Mhm.
when that started happening.
See, we were, in that time when it started slowing down, we had a trucking company, and I think when something to do with the war, when the war was going to come or something.
Was it after the war
Yeah.
that people saw how wonderful Colton was, and they all wanted to move to Colton.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the housing boom started
Yes.
in the Inland Empire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then people needed, the builders needed land to build houses.
Mm-hmm.
So where was the land located? The orange groves.
Yeah, they tore down the orange groves.
So they bought the orange groves, tore
Mhm.
down the orange groves, and built houses. When did
Yeah.
that start? Was that in the 60s, mid-60s? Because the Bracero program stopped in 64.
Mhm.
So I would imagine that's when
Yeah.
everything
60s.
started.
Mhm.
Everything started.
Well, when did they build the junior high?
In
We were last class to graduate from Wilson, that was in 53. And by then, they had already finished, I think they started on 52.
So
I was
weren't
the
they,
first class in
Mhm.
53, 54.
weren't they already starting to tear down the orange groves around then?
Oh, by then, yes. Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But then it just got worse and worse, didn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
it did.
But for the builders, got better and better.
Now, did the Redlands Highlands Association provide oranges to the Pacific Fruit Exchange?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
They must have had other contractors that provided.
Yes, because they had some up north that would pick and bring their food down to the packing houses.
Yeah. Because most of the packing houses were next to the railroad tracks.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
That was so they could take their citrus, the train would be the one that would move, or the trucks, one of the two.
So the fruit came either trucks or railroad
Mhm.
to the packing houses, and the packing houses would
Ship 'em
sort
out.
them and pack them
Mhm.
and ship them out, and the railroad track was next to them.
Yes, uh-huh.
Yeah. Was this true of most of the packing houses?
Yes, uh-huh.
Yeah.
They're mostly all near
Mhm.
railroad track.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you don't see any difference in Colton now?
No, I don't.
No?
Mm-mm. To me, it's the same.
I understand that a lot of the pickers, or at least a lot of the families that were involved in the picking, never had a shortage of fruit at home.
No.
They always were able to take some of the crop home.
Yeah, that's what sometimes they come around with the boxes. Now they come around with boxes selling them, but those they steal from the groves.
Well, that's always happened, that
Mhm.
you would bring a big sack of oranges from after work,
Mhm.
and then you would sell them. But nowadays, we don't hardly have any orange groves.
No.
So people will go out at night and pick
Mhm.
their oranges and sell them,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's true.
Well, I guess it's the packing houses, I guess, where they sorted out the blemished oranges.
Yeah.
And those people got to take some of that fruit home.
Mhm.
Well, in our case, Frank, when I was a little kid in the 40s, those oranges would be thrown away in the dump. And our house was half a block away from the dump. And we would go there and pick those, well, first of all, we'd go on top of the big orange piles, and we'd play war. We'd throw oranges at each other, and then afterwards, we'd
Take
pick
them
the
home.
best oranges and take them home. So we never hurt for oranges. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Gloria, you mentioned that, I asked you, do you see any differences in the way things were when you were young and the way things are now? You mentioned to me that your kids are off and running.
Mhm.
One lives in Minnesota.
Yes,
In the old days, nobody left Colton.
I know.
And then one lives in Orange Coast or Costa Mesa.
Costa Mesa, yes.
And again, nobody would leave Colton in the old days. Everybody stayed in Colton.
My youngest daughter, she was working in Santa Ana. She was living there. She finally got to the point, Mom, I can't do this. I'm gonna get an apartment
Okay.
over there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Now, do you still have lots of relatives in Colton?
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Well, we found out earlier before the interview that Henry's related to you. Now, how is Henry related to you?
I just know my dad told us and Margarita, he was
Mar-
related.
Margarita Gomez,
Uh-huh.
Henry's grandmother.
Mhm. He said he was related, that they were related to us, but he didn't tell us how.
We found a lost cousin today, this afternoon, Henry.
Well, I'll ask around and see if I can find out any information.
All right. Yeah, 'cause that's when my dad, when we used to gather or something, and we didn't know, he would tell us, this person is your cousin, this person, in case, you get together and wouldn't know. But that's why, and we're also related to a man in Highgrove, I can't remember his name. Guillermo or something like that? Contreras. So my dad was Albert Contreras Castillo. Yeah. So we're related to those people in Highgrove.
Yeah, so I would imagine when your grandparents came to Colton, they had relatives here in Colton
Oh,
that
yes.
helped them settle in.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
right. And they came here in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Gloria, is there anything that I missed? I have a list of questions here. I wanted to take advantage of you because you work for the orange industry, and then you had your uncle, Evaristo Castillo El Gordo, that they
Mhm.
called him.
Yeah, they called him.
That was very instrumental in working with the packing houses, and then he was very instrumental in getting jobs for people.
Mhm.
And I wanted to talk about those areas, and we covered them very well. But I had no idea that your cousin, Pete Lukey Jr., was an activist, and he built the church without permission.
Yes.
Is there anything else? Henry, can you think of any other things that we missed?
No, it seems like, I've looked through the questions, it seems like you've covered them.
Gloria, anything else that you would like to mention to us?
No, I guess, like I said, covered everything.
Well, again, thank you very much for being with
Okay,
us this
you're
afternoon,
welcome.
especially on a Friday afternoon, and you taking time out this afternoon to be with us, to talk about, and help us with
Mhm.
with our oral history project.
Mhm.
And Henry, you've been a loyal committee member, you always show up, so thank you, Henry. And then Frank, behind the camera, is kind of steadying, making sure that we get this information for posterity. So thank you, Frank, and thank you, everybody.